Hello, happy Tuesday. Last time, chapter 3, I explained about how I started to experience TMS symptoms in early 2022, and then I went back and explained about the eye condition or eye defect, or whatever you want to call it, strabismus and lazy eye. So my eyes don't align correctly, and I have a much weaker prescription in this eye. And that was because my eyes didn't develop for binocular vision my first 18 months of development, and how that has a huge impact, massive impact on, as I now know, the nervous system and how one is in life, because it affects how I judge height, how I judge oncoming objects, peripheral vision, because I have an astigmatism as well. My gait, how I walk, I always get the word wrong, but where my body is in space. So this has, and it also explains how I found things a lot harder than other people did. So things like learning to drive and ball sports, eye to ball coordination, eye to hand coordination. So I embarked upon this vision therapy program, and I was told to take it very slowly because I was retraining aspects of my brain and learning to do things very differently. And this included motor skills as well. And I didn't. I went all in, and I put an enormous amount of pressure on myself at an already pressurized time, because we were just coming to the end of lockdown, although I don't quite remember what the restrictions were in place at that time. And then these symptoms started to arise. And just to recap, so it started with Achilles tendonitis, both ankles. I went to a physiotherapist. Very quickly that had developed into back problems, lower back problems. I couldn't actually stand up and my back was going into spasm. That then developed into hand and wrist problems, where I was told by the same physiotherapist that I would likely need, it was likely carpal tunnel and I would need surgery. I explained my mum had had it and had surgery. Oh, well, you're probably getting it as well. Too much computer work. You'll need the, is it ergonomic mouse and hand rest and everything. And that then very quickly proceeded into problems with my neck. And all this happened in the space of about 6 weeks. I found this utterly terrifying. And I remember going on holiday. There's two sort of important things that, and this is the beginnings of what started me to learn about TMS. But I remember going on holiday and I couldn't even carry my beach bag with my own beach towel in. It was just too heavy. My back was so sore. But I had been seeing another therapist before I went, and he had said, be very careful when you're going on holiday if you're wearing flip-flops or Birkenstocks, because you've got no ankle support. And I remember going for a walk with my husband, and all I could do was just walk very slowly, very gently, and just and keep stopping for a rest because the ankle pain was so bad. And there was one day, I think I'd been on holiday about 4 or 5 days, I was nice and calm and chilled, and my ankles weren't hurting. And my husband then looked down and said, oh, you haven't put your trainers on, you've got Birkenstocks on. Straight away they started to hurt. And the second thing I noticed was when we sat down in the evening to have a glass of wine before dinner, my ankles didn't hurt then. And I started to question, just instinctively, why am I not getting the ankle pain all of the time? If I have actually damaged my Achilles tendon, why is it not hurting all the time? And that stuck with me for a while. Came back from holiday. As soon as I got back from holiday, another symptom cropped up, which is globus. And I don't know if you've ever had this, but this is the feeling of you've got a lump in your throat and you can't swallow. And it's very frightening. If you don't know what it is incredibly frightening. And I think then we got to a special birthday, or it was just before that, and I went to a pharmacist because I actually really thought my throat was closing up, and I was out for a walk and I was panicking. And so I went to the pharmacist. Have you had anything different to eat? I said, I've tried some new omega-3 supplements. oh, you might be allergic to them, you're probably having a little bit of an allergic reaction, take some antihistamines. I did that, it went away, but then it kept coming back. And then on my birthday, we were going on holiday and we were in the car, my husband was driving, I was reading a book, my head was down like this, so my neck was compressed, and I was feeling quite anxious because it was my 50th birthday, don't ask me why. And the symptoms popped up again, and I had my very first panic attack on the M4 on the way from Bristol to Oxford, and I really thought I was going into anaphylactic shock. And it was just a very kind lady at the services, a first aid lady, who said, you're not going into anaphylactic shock because you would be dead by now. But what's actually happening, she said, I think you've got something called globus, because she had the same thing. And I went to see my doctor, and they did actually put a camera down and gave me the all clear, and that was what I was diagnosed with. It is actually, I think, a stress related, possibly perimenopausal as well. So that was another symptom that cropped up. But again, I thought there's nothing structurally wrong. And it was round about that time. So I now had ankle problems, back problems, hand problems, wrist problems, sometimes the neck and the globus. And I was doing different exercises that the physiotherapists had given me every day. It was taking up so much time. I was getting up earlier to do this before I started work. And I was basically virtually on my knees. I was terrified. I thought, am I going to end up in a wheelchair? Because I'm just getting worse and worse and worse, and more symptoms are cropping up. And nobody seemed, and by this time I think I was on my third physical type of therapy, and nothing was helping. What was interesting though was I was still doing the vision therapy, but what was happening during the vision therapy, and now I've connected the dots, is it was bringing up an enormous amount of emotions that I hadn't addressed or felt for a long time. Really, it was like a tsunami of emotions, really, really powerful ones, of how I'd been picked on and bullied, and just how having the eye defect had really affected my self-esteem for so long. So never being picked at school for sports, rounders, I've never picked, I was always the last. How even in my teens, people would make cruel comments about the eye. As if I didn't bloody know. And that had left a significant mark. And also just because things were harder, and it wasn't for want of trying, like trying to play tennis or badminton or rounders, and trying really desperately hard, or learning to drive. And it's still, it's so difficult, and I now understand why. And all these emotions came up, and I now know from what I've learned from Dr. Sarno that my brain was perceiving that this is incredibly dangerous for me. These emotions were overwhelming me, and all I'd done all my life was just push them down, and they were coming out. And I think, or I now know, that all of these symptoms that arose was my brain's way of saying, we're in danger and we need to stop. But at the particular day where I think I was just literally on my knees, and I wrote I was in tears, I didn't know what to do with myself, I could barely walk, I couldn't run, I couldn't cycle, I couldn't do anything. All my lovely sports, I cycled and ran at the time, had all stopped. And my husband said, why don't you just put a podcast on? I'd never bothered with podcasts before. And try and just come for a gentle walk with me. We'll just do 1 or 2 circuits around the block, if you like. And I remember just sitting in my bedroom, crying, and I wrote on a piece of card, I just need a miracle. I need some help because I don't know what to do. And I wrote that on a piece of card. Please help me because I don't know what to do. I'm trying everything and nothing's working. And I thought, I now need to pick a podcast that's going to perk me up. I'd never done podcasts before. I didn't even know where to begin. So I thought, what sort of things am I interested in? I looked at a few things, not interested. And I came across a podcast called Law of Attraction Changed My Life with Francesca Amber. And I am not joking. This is honest, serious truth. Episode 4, I think it was, she talked about her divorce and how her husband had a horrendous back problem and came across a book by Dr. John Sarno all about TMS and how he recovered. I went home immediately, ordered that book, it arrived the next day, I devoured it in 24 hours, and that was the beginning of my journey of the mind-body connection, TMS, and how I recovered, because I promise I have none of those symptoms anymore, and I had none of those ailments. I did not have a damaged Achilles, I did not have carpal tunnel, and I did not have a bad back, and I have nothing wrong with my throat. So I'll explain more in chapter 5.